we begin.
And here we go.
Q.
007.
Blue is glue.
And when it's red,
Dead.
Is that it?
I think so.
Well, that could have been worse.
There's millions, billions of dollars when you take the whole industry altogether.
This is $100 million.
You say what?
The studios are afraid of original ideas.
The cost of being original is that you're going to go broke.
You might be better off you just stay out of it.
Cut. Thanks for everything.
Independent film, particularly with the help of the internet, is going to go the route of the paperback book.
Remember, we're talking about America, where, don't they teach you in journalism to write to a mentality of a sixth grader? It could be the movie going is also aiming to the same target too, because that's the masses.
All right, let's do this.
All right, and action.
I held the last note in my hand, and while I waited for the race to begin, I looked at it. This note had changed everything. I was one of them.
When I came out of film school, I basically decided to stay here in Arizona instead of going to LA or New York like a lot of the people did. And the reason I did that is because I think that you can make movies anywhere. You don't have to go to those places anymore. It's not necessary. We have the internet, we have cheap cameras. It took me a little while to come up with Running Wild Films, and then after we did, we just started making movies and have been making movies since then.
This is a first step situation with this. We're trying the internet, we're making the movies, we're putting it out there. It might take a while to develop, the audience to develop, to find out what's happening, but I think it will happen.
My world was rocked after I got out of film school and decided to do Running Wild and to do it on my own and be self-sustaining. It was a totally different practice than what we'd learned. They're gearing you up for Hollywood, right? So I basically had to re-educate myself.
We make the picture and we don't wait around. One of the things is that in so many professions, this being one of them, you're always waiting for somebody. Rather than wait for somebody else to decide whether your work is good, bad, acceptable, it's always guesswork anyway. And so what happens is somebody puts himself or herself into position of determining what the audience wants to see. Who knows? Put it out there. And so with the internet, you can. And so that's what we do.
Basically, from the start, we decided that we would release all of our films straight to the internet and that we wouldn't mess with festivals. So we make a film, and then as soon as it's done, we put it online and try to get as many people to watch it as possible. With our full-length movies, we put them on our website, and we're trying to get people to download and stream them for a small cost, like $1 or $5. Within Running Wild Films, we've made 25 short films approximately and 2 full-length movies. We're currently in production on 2 more full-length movies. And we have, like I said, 52 short films being made next year.
To Winslow?
Winslow?
Yeah, standing on a corner in Winslow, Arizona.
I hate that song.
Well, nice quiet town.
A filmmaker named Werner Herzog, who's a foreign and independent filmmaker, said that when you approach filmmaking and becoming a filmmaker, you have to be like the guy who is on top of a building about to commit suicide. He takes a leap off the building, and at first he says, "Oh shit," and then after that he's like, okay, I have to fall 50 stories, better enjoy it, right? So that's kind of what it's like. You take a leap of faith and you just falling through the air, as depressing as that sounds. After producing my first feature-length movie for $1,000, which was much less than anyone told me I could produce it for, the people at ASU, the people in the Arizona film community, anyone I talked to said, you're a fool, you can't do that, you can't make a good movie for that amount. After doing that, seeing that it could be done and done well, I felt encouraged.
1Z, take 2.
We've been patient with you, Bobby. We've been gracious. Do you know what grace is?
Take 2. Action.
Jesus, Michael, you scared me.
Right, but I think slow it down.
Yeah.
Right, slow it down again. Alex, you should be getting some of this so it documents what I have to go through on set.
They've got to find an audience. And the parallel I look at it with is when, again, going back when I was a young person like yourself, that's when paperback books started coming out. The first paperbacks were really reprints of the hardbound. So the hardbound was the equivalent to the big studio pictures. But as the time went on, they started printing original paperbacks that got people following some of those writers. And after a while, some of those original paperbacks, they were actually printing more of them than they were of the hardbound books. But I think that independent film, particularly with the help of the internet, is going to go the route of the paperback book.
I think there's an audience for anyone out there making any type of work. The struggle is finding the audience, connecting with them. If people gave independent films a chance, they would find out that they're not so weird, they're not so different, that it's a more original take on the material that they're used to seeing. If they found themselves watching something different occasionally, I think that they would actually be happier people, and that it would give them a broader perspective on the world.
I think the attraction to independent cinema is to see something that's original, to see something that's thought-provoking, or that sort of, this is going to sound a little hokey, I'm afraid, but to sort of shed light on the human condition. I think one of the things about great art of any kind, and certainly film, is what does this film or book or sculpture or television show say about the human condition in our society at this given moment? And that is the kind of sort of thinking person's cinema that is going to come from an independent film.
Eddie?
Where have you been, man? I've been trying to get a hold of you.
Yeah, I've been busy.
What are you up to tonight? You want to get a drink?
Maybe. You ever been to a place called the Living Room?
No, but I've heard about it. It's a cougar bar.
Cougar bar?
You know, women of a certain age looking for boys to fuck.
They have bars just for that?
We talk about originality on that level. Originality for them might be $50 million, you know. On our level, originality is our energy, our imagination, and what we need to spend, not what we're going to spend, but what we need to spend to make the film look as good as we want it to be.
I think that there's original content being produced in Hollywood. It might be on the kind of like off Hollywood, it might be in the dark corner, but for the most part we're seeing, you know, sequels like you said, and giant films without good scripts. Occasionally one will come through with a great screenplay, but for the most part they're not putting much thought into the content, just the special effects.
All my life it's been that way with the studios because they are a financial entity. They have to make money. And so when we talk about sequels, they know the original made money. They figure people like that, they might want more of the same. And they were doing it even when in the 50s when I was a kid. They just weren't doing it in the great numbers that they are now. But when you look at the box office, it justifies it.
It's a different business model than it used to be back when sort of the new Hollywood came about in the early 70s. At that point, there were more director-driven films and thought-provoking, you know, more mature adult kind of films that you know, not just made for teenagers, and you know, that's not Hollywood's main business at this point.
go slow ahead. Come on down and chum some of this shit.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Steven invented the blockbuster with Jaws. You know, we theater owners, moviegoers, the industry, the studios, distributors, producers didn't know a movie could make over $100 million at one given time. And we knew there were big attendance films like Gone with the Wind and Birth of a Nation, but we didn't know there was something contemporary that could do that well. Along came Jaws, and it proved the blockbuster could happen. So everybody got greedy and money hungry, so Hollywood started going into the formula for their films where let's make a lot of money if we can.
Well, ironically, as much as Jaws inspired me to get into the entertainment business, Jaws also changed the entertainment business, and not necessarily in a good way. Jaws was the birth of the summer blockbuster, followed sort of in succession by Star Wars 2 years later. It was those two films that sort of Hollywood took notice and said, hey, we can, first of all, we can make more than 100 million, but to make that kind of money and then have sequels and spin-offs, and as Star Wars would show, merchandising, that really changed the business.
Unless you run an art house, like in my Camel View Theater, my Shea 14, my Valley Art, could probably care less about the blockbusters. But apart from that little niche, which is not even like 1.5% of the industry, the whole industry depends very heavily on blockbusters. If you take the attendance of the Valley Art and you add it to the attendances we get for all the art independent films for Shea 14, and then the same for Camel View, and add them all up, it will equal about a little more than half of the attendance annually at Tempe Marketplace. So you see what a niche it is, that like all the King's Men and all the King's Horses put together cannot come up with enough attendance for art films that equals one megaplex like Tempe Marketplace.
What the hell?
I wanna see
There aren't as many original ideas coming out of the studio system. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but if you look at any given summer, you will see the top box office of the year. The vast majority of them are either sequels, franchises, or a known property.
The movie-going public votes with their dollar bills, and until they vote for those movies in greater numbers, those movies are going to remain where they are. The reality is, given the marketing machine that studios have, the tie-ins with McDonald's and Burger King and everything else, that there's a million 13-year-old, 14-year-old, 15-year-old, 12-year-olds out there who implore mommy and daddy to give them money to go to the movie theater. And mommy and daddy go, okay, go to the movie theater. And they go.
It is being a servant to the moviegoer. The moviegoer is our boss. And if we anticipate that The Avengers is going to be so successful that it needs to be on multiple screens, we do that. It's amazing how much we are just at the mercy of moviegoers.
One would think that Hollywood would want to invest in a lot more smaller budget films that don't have as much risk financially. But the problem is that there's a fear mentality, and people know what they think they know. And if they know that a franchise or a known entity or a reboot is sort of almost guaranteed to make a certain amount of money, then there is value in that to them.
In a way, it's almost safer to spend more money on something you know is going to have a name brand and some sort of an attraction than it is to risk $10 million knowing that you're probably going to lose $8 million on an art film.
So the actual cost of making a small independent film, when you include marketing and distribution, is much, much higher. And what the studios have discovered is that in the long run, they make more money betting on very expensive, high-budget movies than a whole bunch of smaller, low-budget movies.
You could look at a budget of $300 million and say, wow, that's really excessive, that's a lot of money to spend on a movie. But, you know, even if we only get half of that back through ticket sales, we could recoup the other $150 million through merchandise and other sales, so therefore you can justify spending that kind of money.
It's all about fear. They're afraid to make mistakes, and somewhat understandably, because there's millions, billions of dollars when you take the whole industry altogether at stake, and that's a lot of money. and studio executives are afraid for their jobs, and it's a little easier to bet on an easy bet than something that might take a chance, even if the bet is a lower bet. And that just sort of seems to be the way the mentality kind of works in Hollywood. Someday, I mean, there's always people that say, hey, let's start taking bets on smaller films that won't cost a lot of money, and if they hit, they hit. But if they don't, then you're behind the 8 ball of the other studios.
With respect to the small, really good independent film, the studio does not know that there's going to be an audience there for that. And given the very large costs that have to be made to market and distribute a film these days, films that do not have a built-in audience become much, much riskier to make.
Exit. Where are they? The Canadian ambassador's house.
You got Revolutionary Guards going door to door. These people die. They die badly. White House? Who wants the 6 of them out?
What we like for this are bicycles.
Deliver the 6 bikes, provide them with maps.
Or you could just send in training wheels and meet them at the border with Gatorade.
Don't they teach you in journalism to write to a mentality of a 6th grader? It could be the movie going is also aiming to the same target too, because that's the masses. That's what gets across the best. Even though maybe the average education is way past the 12th grade, but that's what we want to see in our media. So it's just human nature, that's all. That's why the blockbuster will always be there.
Well, I'm not sure if we're ever going to get past the era of the sequels, simply because, and I don't mean to sound cynical, I just don't know that you can put the toothpaste back in the tube.
I think that the studios give people what they want, and unfortunately the studios have set a really low standard for what we want these days, and people are stupid. That's what they go for.
You have a large audience out there that's easily marketed to, and if I wish to be cynical, I would say easily manipulated into a movie theater.
Studios still make money. The film business is still profitable from a studio perspective, and it is those large films, those big summer blockbusters that are the tent poles that really hold up the whole studio business model now. So those work if you're a studio executive or an investor in that studio or a stockholder.
And that affords us the chance to build megaplexes, because keep in mind, thanks to the blockbuster, I can have like the Arizona Mills 24, the Tempe Marketplace 16, and in screen number 14, 15, 16 might hold over the likes of, The Untouchables, Argo, and little independent films like that.
Brandon Tartikoff, who was one of the legendary television executives at NBC back in the day, he once said, look, the world needs hamburger too. And he's right. We all enjoy a big, juicy hamburger. Look, I enjoy a big blockbuster film. I loved The Avengers, but I would also like more variety when, you go to the theater and there's not 5 screens taken up with, the latest sequel.
Thank God for, the Avatars and the Batmans, so I can pay my bills, but I really appreciate that I also, at the same time, can have the theaters like Camel View and Valley Art and Shea 14 that debut the art films.
There used to be a belief that the entertainment industry was recession-proof. I don't know that that's 100% true, but it's largely true. Because even in lean times, people still want their entertainment. So that said, I don't think that the business will ever be in crisis to the point where they're going to say, we need to reinvent this again.
Hollywood will always be here, and thank God. Hollywood's great. They're great at what they do. I just want nothing to do with it.
9/16.
Hey Jerry, it's that blonde.
Hi.
From the other day, the woman, what was her name? The one that was mad flirting with you.
55 Chevy.
I think the independent film makers and the independent film market are hugely important because they are the films that are going to advance the art. That's where original films come out. There are some great films made every year. great films. And it's just a matter of them getting an audience. A lot of the independent films, unless you live in a big city or you have an art house, theater near you, you might not have the opportunity to see some independent films in a theater. But everybody has the opportunity to see really good independent films at home, on DVD, streaming. So that's hopeful.
We haven't seen its full possibilities. And I think it's really going to rock the world of independent filmmaking. So I think it's going to shift gears, go to the internet. People are going to start taking advantage of not making DVDs, not going to distribution companies, and just going straight to their audience. So we'll see. You can never really predict what the future of cinema is.
This is really an exciting time for people who want to make their own films. It used to be that the barriers to entry into the entertainment industry and the film market, and even especially television, were so high because it costs so much money to make a film. To broadcast something on television only goes through the networks. So it was much, much, much harder and more expensive for people to get their own work out there. They had to go through a studio. They had to go through a television network. That's not true anymore. There are, prosumer kinds of level cameras that are really good quality cameras and editing systems that come free on your computer at home. It's really an exciting time for young and any independent filmmaker to make their own product. Here's the catch with that.
The downside is that you get washed out because now there's so many of them that how do you know what you want to pick? And if I have 2 small children, and if they're in bed and I've got 2 hours and I just want to relax and watch a movie, how do I know I'm investing my time in a decent movie versus if I went and just watched Thor or some type of action movie versus taking a writer on some art movie that after 45 minutes I may say, well, this is a total waste of time. Now I can't start anything else.
At a restaurant and watched him do the crossword. He came out of the dark and pulled me down off the wall. He was thin and mean. I could see his rotten teeth through his smile. John Dee's Perfect Family was anything but.
I would long for a return to the kind of films they made in the 70s in Hollywood's second golden age, but I don't know that that's going to happen anytime soon.
Really good low-budget films still can survive. They still can find an audience. And it does happen, not with as much frequency as it used to, but it's still possible. In addition, I have hope that the internet, what with digital distribution being so cost-effective, will enable lower budget films to find an audience.
I think there's an audience for anyone out there making any type of work. The struggle is finding the audience, connecting with them. So again, this is the absolute best time to be making movies as an independent filmmaker outside of Hollywood because it's so much easier nowadays to connect with your audience. You have Facebook, you have the internet, you have YouTube.
Oh, I would much rather see like Robot and Frank, Killer Joe. I even saw The Oranges recently. Maybe not quite as good. I prefer them because they're good storytelling. It's really good storytelling. They do not depend on special effects or having their main protagonist be on Jay Leno or David Letterman. They can't depend on that. They depend on just a lean, mean theater operator like me, getting on our screens, getting the critics in to review it, and doing a grassroots campaign. And if it catches on, it goes on for a long time.
Vous avez fini de jouer, non?
Mais en fait, vous sentez rien du tout là.
Bon appétit.
Ça frise la paresse là, faut renvoyer un peu.
It's not really a competition. It's a genesis. It's an evolution, and we get to see it before us.
Francis Ford Coppola was being interviewed, and he said something that I think is really where we are today as an industry. He said back then, he goes, someday there's going to be some little fat girl in Ohio who's going to be the next Mozart of filmmaking, and she's going to take her father's camera and make her own film. We live in that time right now.
Art finds a way. Maybe not as frequently, maybe not as often, maybe not as easily as we would like.
I'm not a prophet so I wouldn't know. But what I'm hoping will happen is that more and more people will discover independent filmmakers who really mark their film with the kind of personal identity that the writers I'm talking about, they give it their own signature. The French New Wave did that. And so I think that's going to happen again. And that's where I think the future of independent film lies.
Making movies and telling stories is what I enjoy doing. I am a natural born storyteller. That's what I want to do. So, and I want to have complete freedom to choose which stories I'm doing and how I'm doing them. So I decided to do it outside of the Hollywood studio, and I'll keep telling stories in whatever way I possibly can for as long as I can.
Thanks, everyone. Cut. I knew I got too close on it.
Can we quote you in our newspaper campaign? Striggin awesome. Is hobo politically correct? Homeless person, okay? Is it okay?
When I was 7 years old, my, let me start that story over again. Okay.
Is Friggin with an apostrophe?
No, it's F-R-I-G-G. I think with the friggin'.
You guys, oh good, I'm having a grammar argument. On camera, right here. College students win.
You're trying to prompt me to say it's more stupid.
You know what that means? Live long and prosper.
No, this is fun. I'm glad you guys came by.
If you're listening to this and you think about coming into our industry, definitely do. Make us movies. I'll show them, and I will pay you more than half the box office. Just let me keep the popcorn money, okay?